Hey guys, tonight we begin in a world that looks familiar from marble statues and grand ruins, but carries secrets most of us have never imagined. You're standing on a Roman street in the late afternoon, sunlight striking pale stone walls, sandals clicking over paving stones, the hum of markets buzzing in your ears. But the air holds something more than sound. A strange mix of smoke, baking bread, perfume oils, and a sharper note that makes you wrinkle your nose. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. At first, you think the sharp smell might come from a butcher's stall, or perhaps a fishmonger rinsing his wares. But no, your eyes are drawn to a row of clay jars set neatly along the street corners. People stop here, one by one, lifting tunics and emptying bladders into the containers. They do it casually, as if dropping coins into a fountain, and then continue on their way. Confused, you edge closer. Surely this is waste to be thrown away, some crude public latrine. Yet the jars are guarded, even collected. A boy hauls one toward a workshop, sloshing the liquid inside with surprising care. The odor stings your nose, but the seriousness of the act leaves you wondering. Urine. To Romans, this liquid is not refuse. It is a resource, one so valuable that even the emperor taxes it. The Emperor Vespasian, pragmatic to the core, imposed a levy on the trade, and when critics scoffed, he famously held a coin to his son's nose with the phrase pecunia non olet, money does not stink. In his mind, and in the mind of every Roman who benefits from it, waste becomes wealth. The logic lies in what your senses already tell you, the acrid bite of ammonia. Though they do not know its chemical name, Romans have discovered its power. Urine whitens cloth, strips grease, and even softens hides. It is gathered in public jars, sold to laundries, and traded like oil or grain. You follow the boy down a side street, past walls painted with faded advertisements, until he disappears into a building open to the air. Inside, workers tread barefoot in large vats, holding tunics in their hands, stomping rhythmically like dancers. The liquid splashes up, and with each movement, the cloth lightens, stains lifting as if chased away. This is the Fullonica, the Roman laundry, where garments are reborn, not with soap and suds, but with the sharp chemistry of urine. For the Roman citizen, a bright white toga is more than clothing. It is status. It is dignity. The fuller's work ensures that every stain of the street, every mark of the day, is erased. To a Roman, the smell of a Fullonica is the smell of respectability being restored, and so what seems strange to you, jars of urine at every corner, is to them a mark of order and resourcefulness. Nothing is wasted, not even what the body casts off. It is a lesson in Roman thinking. The world offers materials in unexpected places. What matters is not disgust, but usefulness. You pause at the doorway of the laundry, listening to the steady rhythm of feet in liquid, the slap of cloth, the chatter of workers who treat this with no shame. To them, it is work as ordinary as baking bread or forging metal. But you, standing with 21st century expectations, cannot help but imagine the contrast. At home, laundry is scented with lavender, tumbling in humming machines. Detergents foam, water runs clear, softeners leave fabric perfumed. Here, there is only the bite of ammonia, the sharp smell of labor, and the knowledge that behind every gleaming toga in the forum is a workshop of men stomping through jars of yesterday's waste. And yet, as the boy tips his jar into the vat, you notice the pride in the fuller's eyes. His vat does what no river alone can achieve. His clients walk into the forum unstained. He has turned what others might discard into a tool of civilization. Perhaps you start to realize. In Rome, the strange is often the sensible. And still, a thought lingers. If Romans are willing to use this liquid for their clothes, what else might they dare to cleanse with it? The boy disappears into the workshop, and curiosity pulls you along. Inside, the air is heavy and sharp, a mix of steam and ammonia that prickles your eyes. Rows of vats line the room, some shallow, others deep, all brimming with a cloudy liquid that you already recognize. Workers stand in them barefoot, tunics hitched above their knees, stamping rhythmically as though they are pressing grapes for wine. But there is no sweetness here, only the acrid sting of urine rising in waves with every splash. It takes you a moment to understand what you're seeing. Laundry. This is how the Romans clean their clothes. The process is strange, but every movement is purposeful. The workers, called fullers, are craftsmen in their own right. They receive bundles of clothing from households across the city, tunics stained from long days in the sun, togas dulled from dust and sweat, linens stiffened with oil. Each garment is lowered into a vat of liquid, sometimes mixed with volcanic clay or alkaline substances, and then trampled underfoot until the fibers surrender their dirt. To you, it looks like punishment hours of marching in circles, skin puckering in the liquid, nostrils flaring with each breath. But to the Romans, this is industry. This is chemistry without names, practiced through generations of trial and error. They know that the pungent liquid strips grease, brightens white, and loosens stains. The sharper the smell, the more powerful the wash. As you watch, one man hauls a toga from the vat and wrings it out. The cloth, dripping and pale, is passed to another worker who dips it in clean water, then beats it with a wooden paddle to soften the fibers. Finally, it is hung in the open courtyard to dry beneath the sunday. The cycle repeats again and again, until the workshop hums with the rhythm of feet, splashing liquid, and snapping cloth. A fuller is not just a washer, he is a preserver of dignity. In Rome, appearance is a public language. A toga must be spotless for the forum. A tunic must be clean for the market. Stains mark not only the fabric, but the man who wears it. And so, citizens trust the Phallonica to guard their reputations, just as they trust barbers to trim their beards or cobblers to mend their sandals. The strangeness of it makes you glance inward. You think of the neat rows of detergent bottles in a modern store, the soft hum of machines spinning in hidden basements. The most effort you ever give is sorting colors from whites, perhaps folding when the cycle ends. Here, laundry is labor, sweat, smell, and stomping feet. Yet the end is the same, a garment restored, a man able to step into the public eye with pride. And still, the image lingers. A toga gleaming white in the forum, its folds crisp and immaculate. You know now that its brightness is born from this place, from vats of liquid others might discard. Romans saw value where others saw waste, and they built entire industries upon that insight. The work of the fuller doesn't end with washing. You notice shelves stacked with jars of clay and powders, substances used to soften or perfume the fabric. Chalky earth is rubbed into wool to give it a finer look. Scented oils mask the harsher odors. Some garments are even brushed with sulfur fumes to enhance their whiteness further. The Phallonica is not only a laundry, it is a workshop of transformation. But the cost is high. The stench clings to the workers, their skin marked by long hours in liquid, their lungs heavy with fumes. For many, it is the only trade they will ever know. And though Roman citizens may wrinkle their noses when passing a Phallonica on the street, they cannot do without its services. It is a paradox that seems to define Rome. Luxury built upon labor, elegance resting on the shoulders of those who endure the least glamorous work. You find yourself staring at the vat again, the liquid swirling with every step. It shocks you, but it also humbles you, because without this, the gleaming image of Rome, the spotless togas, the shining dignity of the forum would collapse into dust and stains. You take one last look as the workers pause to catch their breath, leaning on paddles, wiping their brows. The garments hanging in the courtyard ripple in the breeze, bright and clean, as though they had never touched dirt. The secret of their purity is hidden here, in the stomping rhythm of men who turn waste into whiteness. And you realize if Romans are willing to soak their finest garments in this liquid, perhaps they saw it as more than just useful. Perhaps they saw it as cleansing, even purifying. A harsh resource, but one that restores what is sullied. The thought lingers as you step back into the sunlight. What other parts of the body might Romans have trusted to this same liquid? You step back into the Roman street, blinking at the sunlight after the dim workshop. The smell of the Fullenica still clings to you, sharp and acrid, but the Romans passing by seem not to notice. They adjust their tunics, greet neighbors, and move on with practiced ease. To them, this is the fragrance of industry, the price of elegance. But soon your attention shifts to something else. A man pauses at a fountain, bending to splash water across his face. Then, almost casually, he raises a small cup, takes a mouthful of liquid, swishes it around, and spits it into the gutter with satisfaction. He smiles broadly at the passerby beside him, revealing teeth that are surprisingly white for a world without toothpaste. Curiosity stirs. The water in the fountains flows constantly, fed by aqueducts from distant hills. It is pure enough, at least compared to stagnant wells. Yet something about his ritual feels different, deliberate, practiced. You draw closer and notice the faint, familiar sting in the air. That smell again. Urine. The realization makes you pause, but the man carries on, unconcerned. To Romans, this is not odd. It is a remedy, a secret for keeping teeth bright and healthy. They have learned, through observation and repetition, that urine whitens fabric, strips grease, and, in the same way, can cleanse the mouth. It is not just any urine either. The most prized comes from Lusitania, modern Portugal, where its strength was said to be unmatched. Traders carried amphorae of it across the sea, not as waste, but as merchandise. Imported urine became a small luxury, a whitening agent for those who cared about appearances in the crowded forums of Rome. You shiver at the thought. A world where mouthwash is drawn not from mint leaves and herbs, but from the body's own cast-offs. Yet here, it makes sense. A smile in Rome is more than a gesture. It is a statement of health, vitality, and status. White teeth, signal care, strength, and even moral character. A man who greets his peers with clean garments and a bright smile stands taller, his presence reinforced by the symbols of order and self-control. The man at the fountain is not alone. A woman nearby dips a cloth in the same liquid, rubbing it gently against her teeth before rinsing with water. Her actions are quick, efficient, and free of hesitation. She believes in the remedy, just as she believes in the healing power of herbs, or the protection of household gods. You cannot help but imagine the modern equivalent. At home, the ritual of brushing is calm and pleasant. Bristles on enamel, a taste of mint, a cool rinse. Dentists speak of fluoride, enamel, and bacteria. Here, there are no dentists as you know them, no microscopes to prove what causes decay. There is only observation. This liquid whitens cloth, so it will whiten teeth. This logic is enough, and it has endured for generations. Yet you notice something else. Though the practice is common, not all smiles are bright. Many Romans suffer from worn enamel, from grit in their bread that slowly chews through teeth, from decay that no rinse can stop. The ritual helps, but it cannot erase the deeper challenges of life without dentistry. Still, it is better than nothing, and for some, it is enough to carry them with confidence into the marketplace or the law courts. The Romans saw the body and its byproducts not as shameful, but as part of the cycle of usefulness. Just as ashes can purify and blood can heal, so too can urine whiten and cleanse. It is a view that makes the world larger, less wasteful, more interconnected. Nothing is discarded if it can serve. You stand at the fountain a little longer, watching as others repeat the ritual. The sound of water trickling from bronze spouts mingles with the chatter of the crowd, the stomp of feet, the neigh of horses. Life continues, indifferent to your hesitation. To the Romans, this is not a curiosity, it is ordinary. And yet, for you, it opens another door. If they would swish this liquid across their teeth, trusting it to keep smiles bright, what else might they use to scrub their bodies? What passed for soap in a world where even mouthwash was born from such surprising origins? The answer waits not far from here, in a jar by the hearth, where fat and ash are stirred into something both crude and clever. The street bends, and you follow the curve past a row of houses where smoke drifts lazily into the afternoon sky. It isn't the pleasant smell of bread or roasting meat. It's heavier, sour-sweet, almost greasy. Curiosity pulls you closer. Behind one doorway, the clatter of clay pots mixes with the scrape of wood against stone. A woman crouches by a hearth, stirring something thick inside a wide vessel. At first glance, you think she is cooking stew. Fat bubbles on the surface. Darkened by the ash, she sprinkles in by the handful. The mixture spits and hisses. The air prickles with a tang you can't place. But she doesn't prepare bowls or ladles. Instead, when the mixture cools, she scoops it into her hands and rubs it against a cloth blackened from use. Slowly, the stains fade. She notices you watching and holds up her creation with a grin. Not food soap. It is nothing like the soap you know. No gentle lather, no perfumes of lavender or citrus. Just the basics. Rendered animal fat from last week's butchered pig, and ash swept from the hearth. 2 scraps of daily life, combined into something unexpectedly powerful. The paste leaves a faint film on her palms, harsh enough to redden skin, but strong enough to strip oil from fabric or scrub grease from pots. It strikes you how ordinary this is for her. In Rome, nothing goes to waste. Fat that cannot be eaten is put to use. Ash that cannot be burned again is mixed and repurposed. Even filth becomes a tool for cleansing. You look around the room, the walls streaked with smoke, the hearth piled with yesterday's embers, and it makes sense. Cleanliness here is not a matter of luxury. It is discipline, a constant negotiation with dirt, sweat, and smoke. You can almost smell your own soap at home, tucked by the sink or shower. Smooth, light, floral. The contrast is almost laughable. You buy yours wrapped in paper or plastic, marketed with promises of silk and hydration. She makes hers with scraps, stirred into being over the same fire that cooks her meals. Yet in the end, both claim the same victory. They make dirt disappear. Still, soap in Rome is only part of the story. Here, bathing is a ritual far larger than a handful of paste. Public bathhouses are the true theatres of hygiene sprawling complexes, where citizens gather not just to wash, but to meet, to gossip, to conduct business. There, oil replaces soap. The body is smeared until it shines, then scraped clean with a strigil, leaving behind a mixture of sweat, dust, and oil. A strange method to you, but a method nonetheless. And so this humble pot of fat and ash feels like a bridge, a step between private homes and public baths, between crude necessity and ritualized cleanliness. The woman scoops another lump, shaping it into a ball for later. The paste clings stubbornly, a reminder that Roman hygiene is never entirely comfortable, never entirely fragrant. But it is practical. It works. She wipes her hands on her tunic, smiles faintly, and returns to her work. You step back out into the street, the smell of grease and smoke clinging to your clothes. The air outside is fresher, though now touched with something sweeter, muskier. A group of women walk past, faces powdered, hair perfumed. Their beauty is striking, but when you look closer, you begin to wonder, what exactly are they putting on their skin? The women passing by catch your eye first because of their elegance. Draped tunics hang in neat folds, sandals laced high up the calf, hair carefully arranged in braids pinned with gleaming pins. But what lingers isn't their clothing. It's the faint trail of fragrance, a curious blend of musk, flowers, and something sharper beneath. You slow your step, watching as they gather at a shaded portico. One produces a small ivory box and dabs powder onto her cheeks with the tip of her finger. Another leans forward with a bronze mirror, adjusting the layer of cream on her skin. From a distance, it looks like any group of friends preparing for an evening, but then one of them opens a jar, and the truth rises on the breeze. The scent is unmistakable. Guano, bird droppings. It takes you by surprise. But here in Rome, this is a respected cosmetic. Mixed into pastes and applied to the face, droppings are believed to whiten the skin, soften blemishes, and preserve youthful beauty. Some formulas are gentle, others stinging, but all are pursued with the same determination: to keep skin pale and flawless. The Romans admire pale skin because it speaks of leisure. A bronzed complexion to them means hours in the sun, laboring in fields or workshops, but a pale face whispers of wealth, of time spent indoors, of status untainted by sweat. Beauty is social currency, and creams, no matter their ingredients, are part of its cost. One of the women laughs, showing a small vial of perfume oil. She tips it carefully onto her wrist, rubbing the liquid across her skin. You catch a note of sweetness, almost floral, followed by something rich and marine. It's no ordinary perfume. It carries whale droppings, ambergris-like substances gathered from the sea, aged and prized for their ability to hold fragrance, costly, rare, and therefore desirable. Another lifts a pot of powder and smooths it across her face. The gleam it leaves is bright, but you notice a faint grey sheen beneath. The powder is made with lead, the same substance used in pipes and vessels. The Romans know it gives a smooth finish, but they do not yet know its danger. Beauty has its risks, and in pursuit of fashion, risks are often ignored. You can't help but picture the modern vanity shelf, jars labelled with promises of youth, bottles scented with rose or citrus, creams boasting vitamins and botanicals. The ingredients are listed, studied, tested. Here, in Rome, the ingredients come from what is near, what can be gathered, what has shown results by tradition. Bird droppings, whale substances, lead dust, each trusted because someone, at some point, swore it worked. A servant arrives with a small bowl of chalk and vinegar, stirring it into a paste. She applies it to her mistress's neck, smoothing it into the skin until it leaves a pale, matte finish. The mistress nods approvingly, satisfied with the transformation. The smell may be strange, the texture unpleasant, but the result is all that matters. In the crowded forum, under the scrutiny of neighbours, appearances speak louder than comfort. For a moment, you wonder if the women are aware of the risks. Perhaps they notice their skin stinging after repeated use, or their health declining slowly with time. But such dangers unfold too gradually to outweigh the immediate reward. A pale, flawless face today is worth more than unseen illness tomorrow. And maybe, in a way, the difference isn't so vast. Modern creams, too, have their hidden dangers, their controversies over chemicals and long-term effects. The pursuit of beauty is timeless, and Rome simply plays the game with the tools it knows. The women finish their preparations, adjusting garments, laughing quietly, and moving toward the forum. Their faces gleam in the fading light, smooth, pale, and carefully perfumed. To them, these cosmetics are not strange. They are the visible proof of belonging to a class that can afford them. You remain at the edge of the portico, the smells still lingering: musk, flowers, salt, and the unmistakable note of guano. It unsettles you, yet you recognize the ingenuity within it. Romans do not see waste, they see possibility. Even what falls from the sky, even what washes up from the sea, can be transformed into beauty. And as the women disappear into the crowd, another scent takes their place, drifting from the nearby market. Stronger, sharper, almost overwhelming. It is not perfume this time. It is food, and not the kind you might hope for. Something is fermenting, and the Romans are lining up for it. The scent hits you before you even reach the stalls. Strong, sour, and unmistakably fishy, it drifts over the chatter of the marketplace like an invisible curtain. You push forward, curious despite the sting in your nose, until you see the source. A merchant is ladling a dark liquid from a clay jar into smaller vessels, each sealed with wax and tied with string. Customers pay eagerly, some clutching 2 or 3 jars at once. At first, you wonder if this is medicine, some pungent cure for stomach troubles. But then you notice the customers drizzling it over bread, spooning it onto vegetables, even mixing it into wine. It isn't a remedy. It's dinner. Garum, Rome's most beloved condiment, made from fish guts left to ferment in vats beneath the sun, until time transforms the mixture into a salty, savory liquid. By the time the process is finished, the fish themselves are unrecognizable, reduced to a broth, so concentrated that just a drop can flavor a whole dish. You watch as a man tears into a hunk of bread, dips it into garum, and smiles in satisfaction. Another spoons it generously over boiled vegetables. A cook stirs it into a stew of beans and barley, the sharp scent rising as steam escapes the pot. For the Romans, garum is not an accent. It is the very soul of flavor. To you, the smell is shocking, but to them, it is delightful, a sign of good taste, even luxury. Expensive varieties are shipped across the empire, some from as far as Hispania, sealed carefully in amphorae and prized in noble households. A jar of fine garum can cost more than a laborer earns in weeks, proof that even in ancient Rome, people were willing to pay dearly for their favorite condiments. It's hard not to smile at the thought. In your world, people argue endlessly over ketchup versus mustard, mayonnaise versus hot sauce. Here, the debate is simpler. Garum belongs on everything. Dinner without it would be like fries without ketchup, nachos without cheese, or pizza without that one topping you secretly crave but never admit. The Romans were not squeamish about food. Alongside garum, they enjoyed stuffed dormice, roasted golden, platters of jellyfish, even dishes of animal organs served with herbs. For the wealthy, the stranger the food, the more impressive the feast. A rare dish was not just sustenance, it was a performance, a statement of wealth and reach. But garum was the constant. Its salty tang cut through the heaviness of bread and porridge. Its umami strength brought life to simple vegetables. Its sharpness masked the flavor of meat that may have lingered a day or two too long in the Roman Sunday. You can imagine it. A Roman family gathered around their evening meal, children dipping bits of bread into a shared bowl of garum, laughter filling the air. In their world, this was joy. In yours, it might feel more like a dare, and yet, part of you wonders if it might not be so strange after all. Fish sauce thrives in parts of the modern world. Southeast Asian cuisines rely on it, celebrated in dishes that balance sour, sweet, salty, and spicy. The difference is only perspective. To Romans, garum was not an oddity. It was comfort. The merchant wipes his hands, sealing another jar. He grins at you as if to say, "Try it, you'll understand." Perhaps you would, if you could forget the vats of rotting fish guts that birthed it. Perhaps one taste would convince you, as it did millions of Romans, that this was flavor worth carrying across an empire. But even as you step away, the smell clings. It clings to your clothes, your hair, even your memory, and you realize with a chuckle, in every age people argue about whose favorite sauce is superior, whose recipe is sacred. Rome was no different. Their condiment just happened to be made from sun-baked intestines. You laugh softly, shaking your head, but the marketplace has more to reveal. The scent of garum fades into a medley of others. Honey dripping from combs, herbs crushed under pestles, bread warm from the oven, meat sizzling on spits. Rome's food culture is not one note. It is a symphony, and garum is only the opening chord. Rome is more than a city. It is the center of an empire stretching from Britain's windswept coasts to the deserts of Arabia. With conquest comes trade, and with trade comes flavor. You pass sacks of pepper, carried all the way from India, cinnamon and cloves from distant spice routes, olives from Spain, figs from Africa. To stand in a Roman market is to taste the globe long before the globe is mapped. The stallholders boast of their wares, offering samples to curious hands. A fig, sticky with sweetness. A wedge of cheese, sharp and crumbly. a cake soaked in honey, dense enough to serve as both dessert and gift. Each bite tells a story of distance, of connection, of the Roman hunger for more than necessity. For the poor, daily meals are simple: bread, porridge, vegetables, sometimes beans or lentils. Yet even here, variety slips in: a dash of garum, a drizzle of oil, a sprig of herb. Ordinary food elevated by touches of empire. For the wealthy, the table becomes a stage. Exotic birds roasted whole, platters of oysters brought fresh from the coast, dishes dyed with saffron for brilliance as much as flavor. To dine with a senator or a noble is to enter theater. Reclining on couches, guests are served course after course, not only to fill bellies, but to impress eyes and ears. Servants bring in trays of dormice stuffed with pork and herbs, pheasants glazed with honey, pies hiding surprises sometimes live, birds that burst forth when the crust is cut. Feasts are not only meals, they are performances, spectacles of power and extravagance. And yet, beneath the extravagance, you notice something consistent. Romans are obsessed with balance, sweet with sour, salty with bitter, spice with coolness. A dish of pork may be paired with fruit. Fish may be served with wine sauces laced with herbs. Where others see food as fuel, Romans see food as philosophy, a harmony of opposites, a mirror of the cosmic order. You pause at a stall selling loaves still warm from the oven. The baker slices one open to reveal a golden crust, the inside dense and fragrant. Bread is the true heartbeat of Roman diet. Give them bread and circuses, a satirist once wrote, and indeed, bread fuels every class, from laborers to nobles. Without it, no feast, no army, no city could survive. Yet even bread changes with wealth. For some, it is coarse and filled with husks. For others, it is fine and white, sifted with care, baked in molds that stamp family names into each loaf. You imagine for a moment a Roman household gathering for dinner, the father reclining, the mother overseeing dishes, children waiting eagerly as servants bring platters. First, a gustatio appetizers of eggs, salad, or olives. Then, the main courses, meats, stews, fish flavored with garum. Finally, desserts of fruit, nuts, or honey cakes. Wine flows freely, never drunk plain but mixed with water, sometimes spiced or warmed. A drink as constant as bread itself. There is a rhythm to it, a ceremony. To eat is to affirm community, to display wealth, to practice culture. No Roman meal is silent. There is talk, laughter, argument, philosophy. Dining is both nourishment and performance, both private ritual and public statement. You step away from the stalls, your senses overwhelmed but alive. The clamor of buyers and sellers fades as another scene draws your attention. A healer's table, lined with jars and powders, promises remedies for every ailment. If food could be this strange, what might medicine demand? The thought unsettles you. The Romans trusted their kitchens with fish guts and droppings. What would they trust their physicians with? You're about to find out. The laughter of the marketplace fades as you drift toward the healer's stall. A wooden table stretches before you, its surface crowded with jars of powder, bowls of liquid, bundles of dried herbs. Behind it stands a man in a worn tunic, his hands stained with substances you'd rather not name. He greets customers with the confidence of one who claims answers, even if those answers arrive in strange forms. At first, it feels familiar. He measures out ground plants, mixes them with wine, explains remedies for fever or pain. But then he reaches for a darker jar. Inside, the substance is thick, earthy, and unmistakably foul. He pinches some between his fingers and blends it into the mixture. Dung. For Romans, medicine is as much about symbolism as science. Dung from animals, pigeons, owls, even boars, is believed to hold properties that transfer into the patient. A paste of droppings mixed with vinegar might be spread on wounds. Taken in tiny doses, Some believe it can settle the stomach. To you, it is shocking. To them, it is simply another resource, another gift of nature put to use. You watch as he prepares another remedy, this time drawing on ashes. He mixes the grey dust into oil and applies it to a man's arm. The patient grimaces but accepts it. Ashes purify. They cleanse what is dirty. Fire transforms, and that transformation is thought to carry power. In a world where infection is unseen and bacteria unnamed, any sign of purification is valued. The healer then pulls forward a small vial, cradled as if it were treasure. The crowd murmurs, and you lean closer to catch his words. This is no common ingredient. It is blood collected from a gladiator who fell in the arena. To the Romans, the blood of a fighter holds vitality, strength, even courage. Those who drink it hope to absorb that power, to chase away weakness or epilepsy. The vial is passed to a man who tilts it to his lips. His eyes close, his expression both reverent and desperate. You feel a chill watching it. To him, this is healing. To you, it is a reminder of how fragile life once was. How much people clung to whatever hope they could find. Everywhere you look, Roman medicine reflects this pattern. Part observation, part symbolism, part ritual. Honey is applied to wounds because it soothes. Vinegar washes cuts because it stings clean. But alongside these logical choices are mixtures of bone, fat, and waste substances, chosen because they are powerful in the imagination. If an owl sees in the dark, then surely its droppings can cure blindness. If a gladiator fights bravely, surely his blood can transfer that bravery to another. You cannot laugh. Not here. Not when you see the faces of those waiting in line. They are not foolish. They are desperate. Illness in Rome is constant, and medicine is the only shield, however fragile. There are no antibiotics, no sterile surgeries, no vaccines. There is only tradition, faith, and the trial and error of generations. The healer's stall is busy, but it is not the only source of care. Temples, too, offer remedies, their priests guiding the sick through rituals of purification, prayer, and sacrifice. Remedies are whispered in chants, carved into tablets, passed down as sacred knowledge. Medicine is not separate from religion. It is entwined, body and spirit treated together. You picture for a moment walking into a modern pharmacy, shelves bright and orderly, labels clear, instructions tested, and then you look back at this wooden table, where jars of blood, dung, and ash sit beside herbs and oils. Both spaces promise the same thing: relief, hope, the chance to heal. Only the methods differ. The healer hands a bundle of herbs and powders to another customer and begins to tidy his stall. You notice the stains on his hands, the smell of his clothes, the weight in his eyes. He carries knowledge both practical and perilous. His remedies may save or fail, but either way, he has given what he can. You step back, letting the crowd close in again. The thought stays with you. Romans lived in a world where medicine was both ingenious and unsettling, where survival meant trusting substances you would recoil from. They did not see filth. They saw possibility. And yet, part of you wonders if this is how they healed the sick. How did they care for the body in daily life? What did cleansing mean outside of illness, in the rhythm of ordinary days? The answer lies just ahead, where steam rises above tiled roofs and the sound of laughter echoes through wide halls. Rome's public baths wait, ready to reveal another layer of the city's strange and brilliant customs. You follow the sound of voices until the street opens into something grander. A vast building rises before you, its entrance framed by columns, steam drifting faintly from within. This is no ordinary place. It is the Roman bathhouse, part spa, part gym, part town square. Stepping inside, you are struck first by the size. Halls stretch wide, their floors decorated with mosaics, their ceilings arched high above. Pools shimmer in the light, some warm, some hot, others cool. Men gather in groups, talking, laughing, debating politics. Slaves hurry past with towels, oil flasks, and Strigel's curved metal scrapers that glint in the torchlight. The air is thick with the smell of oil and sweat, of warm stone and damp plaster. You expect privacy, but there is none. Bathing here is communal, open, and unashamed. People recline on benches, rubbing oil into their skin before passing the Strigil across their bodies. Dirt, sweat, and oil peel away in greyish streaks. The scrapings fall to the floor, swept aside by attendants. It looks less like bathing and more like polishing a statue. You're reminded of your own shower at home. Warm water cascading, soap foaming. The luxury of being alone. Here, there is no foam. No lavender-scented body wash. No personal playlist echoing against the tiles. Just oil, scraping, and the buzz of conversation. Imagine going to the gym, the spa, and your local cafe all rolled into one, and all without a stitch of clothing. Despite the lack of lather, the baths work. The Strigil clears away dust and grime, leaving the skin refreshed. The oil softens and perfumes, sometimes with herbs or flowers mixed in. And most importantly, the ritual restores order. In a city of dirt and noise, the bathhouse offers cleanliness. Yes, but also something deeper, belonging. Around you, the social life of Rome unfolds. A group of men debate politics loudly, gesturing with oily hands. Another pair discusses business, contracts exchanged as easily as jokes. Boys splash in the pool while older men watch, remembering their youth. Friendships are forged, alliances whispered, marriages arranged, all in the echoing halls of steam. It is impossible not to smile at the parallels. Today, you might meet a colleague for coffee, catch up with friends at a gym, or sit in a cafe scrolling through your phone. In Rome, you strip down, grab a Strigil, and talk shop while scraping oil and sweat from your back. Networking, Roman style. But the baths are not just for men. In some towns and at certain hours, women gather too, with their own routines, their own conversations, their own laughter. Children play, elders rest, soldiers recover from drills. For a few coins, the doors of the bathhouse open to nearly everyone, from senator to slave. Cleanliness, in this shared space, becomes democracy of a sort. And yet, even here, luxury marks the wealthy. Rich men bring their own oils, perfumed with spices imported from the East. They hire attendants to scrape their skin gently, rather than risk a rough hand. They step into private rooms with heated floors, while the poor make do with the public pools. Status follows even into steam. Still, the spirit of the bathhouse is inclusive. A senator might find himself shoulder to shoulder with a shopkeeper, both relaxing in the same hot pool, both sighing with relief as the heat loosens their joints. In Rome, the bathhouse is where society mingles, where class lines blur in the haze of steam. You watch as a man finishes scraping and hands his Strigil to a friend, who carefully cleans his back. The gesture is casual, familiar, almost intimate. In a world without loofahs or showers, this is cooperation, trust in action. You imagine asking your neighbor at home to come scrub your back in the local pool. Not likely. Yet here, it is ordinary, and perhaps that is the real heart of the baths. They are not only about hygiene, they are about connection, about Rome itself breathing as one body. To scrape away dirt is also to scrape away division, if only for a moment. When the man reclines again, freshly oiled, he looks peaceful. The crowd hums with conversation, steam rising in soft clouds. The Strigil, sharp and simple, has done its work. You stand at the edge of the hall, half amused, half impressed. Rome may not have invented showers or shampoo, but it created something bigger, a culture where bathing is community, where cleansing is both physical and social. And as the laughter echoes around you, you wonder, if this is how they clean their bodies, what about their homes? When the clothes are washed and the skin is scraped, how do Romans keep their floors and kitchens free of grime? Outside the bathhouse, a matron bends over a clay pot, scrubbing its surface with a mixture that looks and smells just as unusual as everything else you've seen so far. The streets grow quieter as you move away from the noise of the baths. You pass rows of houses, their doors opening onto courtyards filled with the sounds of daily life. Through one doorway, you hear the scrape of a brush and the splash of water. Curious, you step inside. A Roman matron kneels on the floor, her sleeves tied back, her hands rough from work. Before her sits a clay bowl filled with a cloudy mixture, and beside it, a pile of ashes gathered from the hearth. She dips a cloth into the liquid, wrings it out, and presses it firmly against a blackened cooking pot. The smell rising from the bowl is sharp vinegar mixed with ash. She works methodically. First, she sprinkles a thin layer of ash inside the pot, letting the grey dust settle into the greasy film left from yesterday's stew. Then she pours in a splash of sour wine that has turned to vinegar. The liquid foams slightly as it touches the ash, releasing a tang that stings your nose. With her cloth wrapped around her fist, she scrubs in circles, grinding the ash against the metal until the grease loosens and lifts away. This is no accident. The Romans knew the properties of these materials, even if they had no chemical names for them. Ash is rough, scouring like sand. Vinegar cuts through fat, its acid dissolving the residue of oil and smoke. Together, they make a paste that works as a cleanser, strong enough to strip even the heaviest soot from cookware. When the surface looks brighter, she rinses the pot with water from a jug and tips the grey mixture into the gutter outside. Then she sets the pot in the sun to dry before moving to the next. Each one goes through the same cycle: ash, vinegar, scrubbing, rinse. The rhythm of her work is as steady as the hum of the city beyond the walls. Nearby, another servant tends to the floor. Roman homes often have stone or packed earth flooring, which absorbs dust and moisture. To freshen it, she sprinkles ashes across the surface, sweeping them back and forth with a bundle of twigs. The ash absorbs odors and damp patches, leaving the air cleaner. When she gathers the ashes into a pile and sweeps them out the door, the floor looks brighter, the smell lighter. You notice a jar standing in the corner. At first you think it's water, but then the matron lifts it and pours a small measure into her cleaning bowl. The pungent scent leaves no doubt. Urine, collected from chamber pots and kept for chores. To a Roman, this is another tool rich with ammonia that breaks down stains and whitens cloth. She saves it for the hardest tasks, like bleaching tunics or scouring wool combs, where grease clings stubbornly. It is not used lightly, but it is used without hesitation. Now she turns to the wool she spun earlier in the week. The fibers are yellowed, sticky with natural oils from the sheep. She lays them on a board, sprinkles ash over them, then wets them with vinegar and a dash of the sharp liquid from the jar. As she rubs the strands between her hands, the oils lift, the fibers grow lighter. Soon they will be ready for dyeing. Bright colors that show better on clean wool than on greasy. Everywhere you look, the same principle appears. Ashes are scattered, vinegar is poured, urine is saved. Pots, pans, floors, even fabrics all treated with mixtures born from what is already at hand. Nothing is wasted. Fire leaves ash. Wine turns sour. The body provides its own ammonia. In a city of hundreds of thousands, these substances are cheap, plentiful, and effective. You imagine for a moment doing this at home. No sprays that smell of lemon, no bottled bleach, no rows of neatly labeled cleaners. Instead, you would keep a box of ashes by your stove, a jug of vinegar by the wall, and a jar of liquid you'd rather not explain to your guests. Cleaning would be messier, harsher, but no less determined. The matron pauses, wiping sweat from her forehead. Her hands are raw, reddened by the constant scrubbing, but her eyes are calm. This is not drudgery, it is duty. The order of the home reflects the order of life. Clean pots, fresh floors, whitened wool, all signs that the household is disciplined, respectable, Roman. Her children burst in from the courtyard, laughing, their sandals muddy. She sighs, dips her cloth into the bowl again, and kneels to scrub at the new stains. You can almost hear the echo across time. Housework never ends. Yet there is something admirable here. Without chemical knowledge, without factories or laboratories, the Romans discovered what worked. They found cleansing power in ashes, acid in vinegar, whitening in urine. Where others might see filth, they saw tools. Where others discarded, they repurposed. You step back into the street, carrying the smell of vinegar and ash with you. It clings to your memory as much as it does to your clothes. And as you walk, chanting drifts from a nearby temple, solemn and rhythmic. The household has its cleansers, but so too do the gods. In Rome, purity is not only domestic, it is sacred. The temple rises before you, pale against the sky, its steps worn smooth by countless feet seeking the favor of the gods. As you climb, the air changes. The clamor of the marketplace fades, replaced by a rhythm of chanting that seems to pulse with the stones themselves. You step into a courtyard filled with smoke and song, and at once you know this is not a place of comfort. It is a place of power. Priests in long white robes move in measured procession. They carry bowls and braziers, their movements slow, deliberate, as though time itself has thickened within these walls. The first stops at a fire pit where the remains of a sacrifice still glow. With a bronze ladle, he gathers the ashes, lifting them with care, as if holding something alive. He pours the dust into water drawn from a sacred spring. Grey swirls in the basin, like clouds forming in the sky. The mixture is stirred with a sprig of laurel, its scent sharp and evergreen. When the priest sprinkles droplets onto the gathered crowd, they do not recoil. They bow their heads, letting the ash settle into their hair, their tunics, their skin. Ashes of death turned into symbols of renewal, fire consuming the body, leaving only what is pure enough to touch the divine. On the altar, another priest bends over a sheep newly sacrificed. He parts the body with practiced hands, lifting the organs into the light. His eyes trace their surface, searching for signs, a blemish, a darkened fold, an irregular curve. To Romans, these marks are the voice of the gods. The liver becomes a map of destiny, the heart a window into divine will. What you see as blood and viscera, they see as sacred text. The air is heavy with incense, resin burning in thick spirals. Yet beneath the perfume is another odor, sharp and pungent. You turn toward a row of shallow basins and realize what they hold. Urine, collected, consecrated, treated not as filth but as potent cleanser. Worshippers dip their hands, scrubbing palms, rubbing drops onto their foreheads before stepping into the inner court. The sting in your nose makes you hesitate, but for them, this is purification. Ammonia cutting through not just dirt but unseen corruption, restoring balance between mortal and divine. The effect is strangely humbling. In your world, sacred water is cool, clear, refreshing. Here, it is bitter, acrid, yet believed to be more powerful, precisely because of its harshness. Purity is not gentleness. It is trial. It is fire, ash, salt, and sting. A boy walks slowly around the temple's edge, scattering yellow sulfur dust across the threshold. The powder glows faintly in the sunlight, like fragments of the sun itself fallen to earth. When the brazier flames touch it, a harsh smoke fills the air, sulfur burning sharp in your throat. Worshippers cough, but do not move away. The sting is proof that evil has been driven out, that demons cannot withstand the fire. The temple itself groans with the sound, a sanctum remade in smoke. Offerings follow. Loaves of bread, sprinkled with salt, are placed upon the altar. Wine is poured, crimson pooling into the earth. Incense continues to burn, its sweetness clinging to the harsher odors. Then come stranger gifts. Cakes made with animal fat, clay figures broken in ritual, blood smeared across the stone. In these substances lies meaning, fat as life's abundance, Clay as humanity's frailty, blood as the bond that ties all living things to the gods. The line between clean and unclean blurs. What seems polluting is transformed into holiness. What seems grotesque becomes sacred. And sometimes, purification takes a human form. A slave or an outcast is chosen as the pharmakos, the scapegoat. Symbolically, they carry the city's sins upon their body. Beaten, paraded, or cast out, they bear away the corruption of the people. Cruel, yes, but to Roman eyes, necessary. A dark mirror to cleansing, sacrifice turned into salvation. You stand silent, the smoke curling around you, the chants rising higher. The ritual is not meant to be understood in logic, it is meant to be felt. Ashes brushing your skin, sulfur burning in your lungs, the sting of ammonia on your palms, a body open to the sky. Together, they weave a world where humans and gods remain bound, where purity is fought for with fire and blood. For a moment, you almost see it as they do. Not strange, not grotesque, but luminous. Ashes glowing like stars, smoke rising like prayer, entrails mapped like constellations, purity written into matter itself. And then, as suddenly as it began, the chanting fades. The smoke clears. The crowd disperses, marked with ash, salted bread, and a sense of release. Order has been restored. You step out into the sunlight, blinking, the sounds of the street rushing back. The temple lies behind you, heavy with mysteries. Ahead, another sound grows, not sacred chanting, but the roar of thousands. The Colosseum waits, its sand already darkened by blood. There, ritual takes a different form, not solemn, spectacular. The chanting of the temple fades behind you, but the roar ahead is unmistakable. It grows with every step, a tide of voices that rumbles in your chest before you even see the source. And then, suddenly, the Colosseum rises into view, towering arches, walls alive with banners, crowds flooding the entrances. Rome's grandest stage. You might expect silence for what is about to happen here. Reverence, solemnity. But no. The atmosphere is festive, almost cheerful. Vendors shout over the crowd, offering bread, olives, cups of watered wine. Children tug at their parents' hands, eager to find their seats. Families laugh, men wager, women gossip. It feels less like a place of death, and more like, well, like game day. You follow the crowd inside, and the resemblance grows stronger. The stands sweep upward in concentric rings, filled with tens of thousands of spectators. Everyone has their section, senators close to the action, ordinary citizens higher up, the poorest squeezed at the very top. The energy crackles like a modern stadium just before kickoff. Only here the players will not walk off the field alive. The sand below is freshly raked, bright and golden. But you know, and the Romans know, that by day's end it will be soaked red. For them, this is part of the spectacle. The Colosseum is not only about fighting, it is about purification through blood, theatre through violence, and above all, entertainment. A trumpet sounds. The crowd hushes, then erupts in cheers as the first combatants enter. Gladiators stride into the arena, their armor gleaming, their muscles oiled, weapons raised in salute. Some are veterans, celebrated like celebrities, their names whispered with admiration. Others are novices, their fate uncertain. All are here to fight, to bleed, to die for the amusement of the city. The absurdity is hard to miss. You glance around and see vendors still climbing the steps, selling dates and honey cakes as though this were a picnic. Imagine buying popcorn while a man below you prepares to battle for his life. That is Rome. The blending of horror and holiday into one roaring spectacle. And it doesn't end with gladiators. The arena is a theatre of variety. Today might bring wild animal hunts, leopards loosed into the sand, hunters dodging claws and teeth. Another day might stage naval battles, the arena flooded with water, ships clashing where moments before men had fought. Even executions are entertainment. Criminals are dressed in costumes and forced to reenact myths, their deaths scripted into the story. One condemned man plays the role of Orpheus, mauled by a bear. Another becomes Icarus, hurled from a high platform. The crowd watches, not with pity, but with excitement. This is justice, they say. This is performance. This is Rome proving its power. You imagine a modern halftime show, only instead of dancers, there are lions. And instead of fireworks, there is fire consuming a wooden stage with prisoners tied to it. The line between sport and punishment blurs until both are simply spectacle. And yet, the audience is not passive. At critical moments, the crowd raises its voice in unison. A gladiator kneels, wounded, raising a hand in surrender. The crowd decides, should he live or die? Thumbs up, and mercy is granted. Thumbs down, and the final blow falls. The emperor, seated in his box, often echoes the people's will. It is democracy of a brutal kind, where applause or silence seals a man's fate. You glance at the sand again, and something strikes you. After each fight, attendants rush forward with buckets of sawdust to soak up the blood. Sometimes, that blood is collected, sold as medicine for epilepsy or consumed in the hope of gaining strength. Stadium cleanup crews don't usually double as pharmacists, but here, in Rome, every drop has value. The noise of the crowd swells, and for a moment you feel swept up in it. The rhythm of cheers, the clash of weapons, the thrill of drama. It is hard not to. That is the genius and danger of the arena. It draws you in, makes you complicit, until the line between spectator and participant begins to fade. And then you remind yourself, this is not sport. This is death turned into pastime. Rome has elevated violence into art, suffering into ceremony. The games purify the city not by prayer, but by spectacle. For every roar of approval, there is a life ended on the sand. As the crowd surges to its feet again, you slip away, your ears ringing. The Colosseum remains behind you, pulsing with the energy of tens of thousands. For them, this is joy. For you, it is haunting. The street outside feels strangely quiet, though the games continue within. You breathe deeply, the air sharp with dust and sweat, and wonder, if Romans could cheer so loudly for death in the arena, how did they face it at home? What rituals marked the end of an ordinary life, away from the sand and the spectacle? The answer lies not in shouts, but in silence in the hushed courtyards where families gather, in the rites that prepare a body for its final journey. The Colosseum rises before you like a stone mountain, its arches packed with cheering voices. You step inside, bracing for horror, and yet what you find is something stranger. Amid the blood and spectacle, there are moments when death slips away, when the arena's script is broken by chance, mercy, or sheer ingenuity. You take a seat, the sun warming the stone beneath you, and watch as two gladiators circle each other on the sand. One is armored heavily, shield raised, sword steady. The other is lighter, armed with only a net and trident. The clash begins, fierce but uneven. Soon, the man with the net is on the ground, blood darkening his leg. He raises a hand, signaling surrender. The crowd leans forward, voices rising in a chant. Now comes the moment. Will he live or die? All eyes turn to the emperor, seated in his box, his thumb poised. For a breathless instant, silence hangs over the arena. Then the emperor lifts his thumb upward. The crowd erupts in cheers. Mercy. The wounded man will live to fight another day. His opponent helps him to his feet, and the two leave the arena together. You exhale. For a place so feared, mercy can sometimes be louder than cruelty. Not every escape comes from the emperor's hand. Sometimes, the fighters themselves sway the crowd. A gladiator who shows extraordinary skill, even in defeat, may win the audience's admiration. Romans loved courage, almost as much as victory. A man who fought bravely but fell might be spared simply because the people wanted to see him fight again. In a way, it was their version of fan loyalty, the same energy that makes modern crowds cheer for a player carried off the field, hoping for his return. And then there are the accidents. On some days, wild animals are loosed into the arena. Lions, leopards, bears. Hunters and gladiators try to bring them down, but chaos often follows. One story tells of a man cornered by a lion, the beast lunging for the kill only to slip in the sawdust and sprawl awkwardly at his feet. The crowd roared with laughter, the tension broken, and in the commotion the man scrambled to safety, a life spared by nothing more than clumsy luck. Other escapes are cleverer. There are tales of condemned men who were meant to die in staged executions, dressed as mythical figures and thrown to the beasts. Yet sometimes the beasts refuse to play their part. Lions lay down instead of attacking. Leopards turned away uninterested. When that happened, the crowd often took it as a sign of the gods. To kill the man anyway would seem impious. So he walked out alive, saved by the whim of an animal and the will of the gods. You smile at the thought. Imagine planning the most elaborate stage play of your life, only for the star performer, a lion, to decide it isn't hungry. Escape could also come through disguise. One tale tells of a gladiator who slipped into the crowd after a match, mingling with spectators still buzzing with excitement. Cloaked in dust and sweat, he disappeared before guards noticed. Whether it is truth or legend, it speaks to the possibility that not every arena story ended in blood. And of course, the arena itself sometimes conspired. Wooden platforms collapsed, gates jammed, cages failed to open. On more than one occasion, prisoners destined for death found themselves forgotten in the confusion, only to be marched back to their cells alive. A delay was not mercy, but it was survival. The crowd did not always clamor for death either. Sometimes they wanted drama, and a close escape was the best drama of all. A gladiator pinned to the sand, sword at his throat, who managed to twist free at the last moment that was worth more applause than a swift kill. Romans loved suspense, and suspense required the possibility of survival. Sitting there, you begin to see the Colosseum less as a machine of death and more as a theatre of chance. Yes, blood spilled often, but chance in the form of mercy, luck, or animal misbehavior meant that not every fight ended the same way. Survival itself became part of the spectacle. You think of your own world sports, the last-second saves, the underdog victories. The difference is vast. Of course, today's players walk off the field with bruises, not wounds. But the feeling of the crowd, gasping at an unexpected turn, cheering for survival that is timeless. The sun dips lower, shadows stretching across the sand. The games continue, but you carry with you the memory of those moments when death was expected and life triumphed instead. The Colosseum is not gentle, but it is unpredictable. And sometimes, unpredictability favors the living. As the crowd surges to its feet once more, you slip away. The roar fades behind you, replaced by something quieter, sadder. The sound of mourning from a nearby courtyard, where a family prepares a body for burial. The arena shows how death can be delayed. The home shows how it is finally faced. The roar of the Colosseum fades as you walk into a quieter street. The sound here is different, not cheers, but wailing. High, rhythmic cries echo from a courtyard where neighbors have gathered. You pause, peering inside, and find yourself in the middle of a Roman funeral. At first, it feels familiar. A body lies on a couch, flowers scattered, family gathered nearby. But the details begin to stand out, one by one, and soon you realize that Romans approach death with customs as curious as any you've seen so far. The wailing, for example, isn't only from family. Professional mourners have been hired to cry loudly, tearing their hair and beating their chests. The louder the lament, the greater the honor shown to the dead. Imagine outsourcing your grief like ordering takeout. One large pepperoni and 5 mourners, Please make them extra dramatic. The body itself is treated with care, but also with unusual substances. First, it is washed, not always with water, but sometimes with wine, vinegar, or even urine, thought to cleanse impurities. Then oils are rubbed into the skin, scented if the family can afford it. Coins are placed over the eyes or in the mouth, a fare for Charon, the ferryman of the underworld. Without the coin, it was believed the soul might wander restlessly, unable to cross the river Styx. A strange superstition, perhaps, but one that made even the poorest families save for funeral coins. Priests arrive to perform purification rituals. They sprinkle the house with water and ashes, fumigating rooms with burning herbs and sulfur. The smoke is sharp, but symbolic, driving away restless spirits, ensuring the family is not polluted by death. For days afterward, relatives avoid certain foods or rituals, observing a period of mourning that doubles as a spiritual quarantine. And then comes the procession. The body is carried through the streets, preceded by musicians, flutes, horns, even drums, and sometimes actors wearing wax masks, molded after ancestors' faces. These imagines make it seem as if generations of the family walk alongside the deceased, a literal parade of history. The effect is eerie, like being followed by your own genealogy chart. But to Romans it was powerful. Proof that the family's legacy was alive in every funeral march. The route ends at a tomb or cremation site. Cremation was common, the body burned on a pyre, flames rising as mourners offered prayers. Ashes were gathered into an urn, sometimes simple clay, sometimes marble carved with intricate scenes. Wealthier families built mausoleums, monuments lining the roads outside the city. For ordinary citizens, graves dotted the countryside, marked with humble stones. But purification didn't stop with burial. Once the body was laid to rest, the family returned home to more rituals. The house itself was swept, fumigated, sprinkled again with water and sulfur. Food was offered at the tomb for days. Small cakes of grain and honey left to feed the spirit. Annual festivals, like the Parentalia, ensured that ancestors were remembered with gifts of wine, flowers, and bread. Forgetting the dead was considered dangerous. Their spirits might grow restless, knocking on doors or stirring bad luck. You imagine for a moment how strange this would look in your own world. Professional mourners hired to fill the air with shrieks, coins tucked into mouths, just in case. Entire families lighting sulfur in their kitchens to chase away invisible spirits. And yet, the strangeness carried purpose. Romans believed that death polluted, but also that it could be contained, managed, even softened through ritual. Their customs created order where chaos threatened, and not all of it was grim. At some funerals, actors performed comedies, poking fun at the deceased to make the living laugh. At others, feasts followed the burial, family and friends eating and drinking together in honor of the one who had passed. The Romans knew that grief and joy could walk hand in hand, that life continued even in the shadow of death. Standing in the courtyard, you notice a final gesture. After the funeral, the mourners leave, but one family member stays behind with a broom. Carefully, they sweep the threshold of the house, symbolically brushing death out the door. It is simple, almost mundane, yet deeply meaningful. You smile at the thought. In your world, grief is often quiet, solemn, kept behind closed doors. In Rome, it spilled into the streets, wrapped in noise, ritual, even humor. Death was strange, yes, but it was also communal. Everyone shared in it, from professional mourners to ancestors in wax masks, to neighbors following the procession. And perhaps that is what lingers as you walk away, the sense that Romans met death not with silence, but with activity, to wash, to burn, to sweep, to feed, to remember. Their customs may seem odd, but they reveal a culture determined to tame even the greatest mystery with ritual and tradition. The wailing fades behind you, replaced once more by the hum of daily life. The city goes on, vendors calling in the streets, children running in the dust, the smell of bread rising from ovens. Life and death, side by side. You pause, curious. If death demanded so much attention, what did it mean simply to live as a Roman day by day? Not as an emperor or a gladiator, but as an ordinary person, scratching out survival with whatever resources the city offered? The answer lies ahead. In the strange ways Romans bent animals, land, and even waste itself into tools for daily life. The street winds toward the edge of the city, where the air smells not of incense or sulfur, but of hay, feathers, and dung. You glance around and realize you've stumbled into a part of Rome less glamorous than the baths or temples, but just as revealing: the world of animals. Everywhere, creatures bustle alongside humans. Pigeons flutter overhead, tethered goats nibble at scraps, donkeys strain under loads of grain. And unlike today, where animals are often kept for companionship, in Rome almost every creature is judged by its usefulness. Nothing is wasted. Take the pigeons. In many cities now, they are nuisances, pecking at crumbs in parks. Here, they are a resource. Pigeon droppings are gathered carefully from coops, prized as fertilizer for gardens. Farmers mix the white dust into soil to enrich it, ensuring crops grow strong. The same substance also finds its way into cosmetics creams that claim to whiten skin or treat blemishes. Imagine telling your friends that your skincare secret is pigeon guano. In Rome, it might win you admiration. Goats, too, are everywhere. Their milk becomes cheese, their hides become leather, their bones carved into tools. Even their droppings, when dried, are burned as fuel in poorer households. Nothing about a goat is wasted, not even its stubborn personality. Children chase them through alleys, laughing as they dart and bleat, unaware that tonight the same goats may flavor a stew. Dogs trot along the streets, some kept as guards, others as hunters. Collars of bronze or iron jingle around their necks, warning strangers that the house behind them is well protected. Cats slink in doorways, tolerated not for affection but for their skill at catching mice. Romans respected animals, but rarely indulged them as pets in the modern sense. A dog or cat was expected to work, to guard, to hunt, to rid a storehouse of rats. Love was a luxury, usefulness a necessity, and then there are the more exotic creatures. In noble households, you might find parrots trained to mimic words, or monkeys brought from distant provinces to amuse dinner guests. Wealthy Romans displayed animals as signs of status, just as they served rare dishes at feasts. A parrot that squawked in Greek? That was a conversation starter. A pet monkey that snatched fruit from guests, proof that your wealth stretched across the seas. Even fish were drawn into Roman life in surprising ways. Wealthy villa owners kept piscinae, artificial fish ponds, where prized eels and carp swam until they were needed for dinner. Some Romans grew so attached to their fish that they decorated the ponds with mosaics and fed the animals by hand, almost like modern aquariums, except the pets might be served at the next banquet. Every part of an animal could serve a purpose. Horns were ground into powders for medicine, fat rendered into soap, bones shaped into pins or needles. Even dung played its role, mixed with clay to strengthen building materials, smeared on walls to repel insects, or burned to create smoke that drove pests away. To Romans, animals were not just companions or food. They were partners in the endless work of survival. You think of your own world, where animals are often kept in neat categories: pets, livestock, zoo exhibits. In Rome, the boundaries blur. A pigeon can be both messenger and medicine. A fish can be both decorative and dinner. A dog can be both companion and security system. Every creature contributes something, even if that contribution seems strange to modern eyes. One story tells of geese kept on the Capitoline Hill, sacred to the goddess Juno. When enemies crept up to attack the city at night, the geese honked so loudly that guards were roused and the city saved. Ever since, geese were honored, paraded, and fed a reminder that even the lowliest bird might one day save Rome itself. The city streets hum with this mixture of humans and animals. an ecosystem woven into daily life. Donkeys bray, pigs squeal, chickens scatter at your feet. It is messy, noisy, sometimes smelly, but it is also ingenious. Romans live in constant closeness with the animal world, bending it into every aspect of survival. You pause as a farmer walks by, carrying a basket heavy with eggs and a small jar of pigeon droppings. He smiles, proud of his goods, and you realize that for him, nothing here is strange. These are resources, blessings from the gods, proof that nothing in life is wasted. And as you watch him vanish into the crowd, you wonder, if Romans could weave even animals into their rituals of survival, what did they make of the line between the human and the divine? The answer waits in the next temple, where purity, sacrifice, and faith intertwine once more. By now, you've seen jars of urine treated like treasure, laundry workshops where men stomp in vats of ammonia, faces painted with bird droppings, kitchens flavored with fermented fish guts, and bathhouses where oil and scraping pass for soap and showers. You've wandered through temples filled with sulfur smoke, arenas roaring with unpredictable escapes, and homes kept clean with vinegar and ash. You've met pigeons that fertilize fields, goats that fuel stews and fires, even geese that once saved the city. Step back for a moment, and the pattern begins to glow. The Romans lived in a world where nothing was wasted. To them, every substance, every scrap, every creature had value if you knew how to use it. Where you might see garbage, they saw potential. Ash was not residue but cleaner. Sour wine was not spoiled but vinegar. Urine was not filth but bleach, mouthwash, and even sacred water. Dung fertilized fields, healed wounds, smoked out pests. Animals weren't just food, they were guards, tools, even omens from the gods. It is a way of thinking that feels alien and yet strangely admirable. In a time without laboratories or supermarkets, Romans built their world with what lay around them. Observation was their science, practicality their philosophy. If something worked, it was kept. If it seemed to work, it was passed on. The line between miracle and method was thin, but it held Rome together. You smile, imagining how this mindset would sound in your own life. A friend complains about spoiled wine, and you say, "Don't pour it out, scrub the kitchen with it." Another moans about laundry, and you reply, "Save the bathroom jar, it'll bleach your tunic." Strange advice today, but in Rome, perfectly reasonable. There's humor in it, yes, but also wisdom. The Romans remind us that comfort is a modern luxury, not a given. They lived close to the edge, where survival meant stretching every resource. What to us is disgusting or odd, to them was proof of ingenuity. Even their strangest customs reveal a consistent truth. The Romans believed in order. Clothes must be white, homes must be scrubbed, bodies must be scraped, spirits must be purified. Purity and cleanliness, whether physical or spiritual, mattered deeply. Their methods may startle us, but their purpose is one we still share. And this resourcefulness shaped more than households. It shaped an empire. The same mindset that turned waste into cleanser also built aqueducts from stone, roads that stretched for miles, and amphitheaters that still stand 2,000 years later. Ingenuity was their inheritance, and they used it relentlessly. As you walk through the city one last time, the smells and sounds mingle into a tapestry. Vinegar sharp in the air, garum clinging to food stalls, smoke from baths, sulfur from temples, the bray of donkeys, the coo of pigeons. It is chaotic, messy, and strange, but beneath it runs a logic as steady as the aqueducts overhead. The Romans did not divide their world neatly into clean and dirty, useful and useless. They blurred the boundaries, turning refuse into resource, turning discomfort into ritual. In their eyes, the world was full of tools, waiting to be discovered, and perhaps that is why their customs fascinate us still. Because even when we wrinkle our noses, we recognize a deeper truth. Human beings, across time, will always find a way. You pause, breathing in the layered air of the city. In a way, you envy their creativity, their closeness to the raw stuff of life. In another, you are grateful for your mint toothpaste, lavender detergent, and supermarket shelves. Both feelings can live together: curiosity for their world and appreciation for your own. Ahead, the city quiets as the evening falls. Lamps flicker to life, casting soft light over mosaics and marble. You sense the story drawing to its end, the strangeness of Roman life giving way to reflection. Tonight, you have walked among people who turned the unthinkable into the ordinary, who bent every part of nature to their needs. Strange, yes. Surprising, certainly. But also deeply human. The city of Rome settles into twilight. The roar of the Colosseum fades. The bustle of the market stills. Even the steam of the baths begins to drift away into the cool night. Lamps flicker in doorways, casting pools of golden light on worn stone streets. Somewhere, a child laughs. Somewhere else, a flute plays. Rome exhales, and with it, so do you. You have walked its alleys and workshops, its temples and homes. You have seen jars of urine turned into bleach, ashes into soap, droppings into cosmetics, fish guts into delicacies. You have watched priests turn sulfur smoke into sacred breath, and families sweep death out their doors with brooms. You have seen goats give milk and fuel, pigeons give fertilizer and beauty, geese give warning and salvation. Strange, yes. Sometimes unsettling, but also ingenious. The Romans remind us that human survival is not only about strength or conquest, but about creativity, about looking at the world, even its messiest parts, and asking, what can this become? For them, nothing was wasted. For us, that thought can be oddly comforting, because it tells us that no matter how unusual life feels, people will always find ways to adapt. Tonight, as you lie in your own bed, you do not need to worry about jars of ammonia by the doorway, or sulfur smoke filling the air, or fish sauce fermenting in the sundae. You have soap that smells of lavender, toothpaste that tastes of mint, food that comes wrapped and safe. You have warmth, comfort, and peace. And yet, by remembering how Romans lived, you can carry a little gratitude into your dreams. Breathe deeply now, in and out. Let the noise of Rome fade like a distant echo. Let the images, the mosaics, the marble, the bustling markets grow soft and blur. They belong to the past, fascinating and strange. But tonight, you belong here, in the quiet of your room. You are safe. You are warm. Everything you need is close at hand. The Romans found their peace in resourcefulness. Tonight, you can find yours in rest. So let your thoughts drift like incense smoke in a temple. Let your body sink into the mattress as firmly as a Roman stepping into a hot bath. Let your breath slow, steady as a legion marching home. There is nothing more you need to do. Tomorrow will come on its own. For now, give yourself permission to let go, to close your eyes, to sleep. Good night.